You ever notice how your own body betrays you before your mind catches up? The little tremors in your hands, the way your heartbeat doesn't keep the same rhythm it used to. The ache is in places you didn't even know existed. People call it age, stress, hormones, whatever makes them feel safe. But what if it isn't just decay? What if it's preparation? What if the cracks, the shifts, the strange pulses in your skin aren't signs of weakness, but signals of transformation? Your body is smarter than you think. Smarter than your excuses, smarter than your denial, smarter than the little stories you tell yourself to stay comfortable. You believe it's random, don't you? The fatigue that shows up out of nowhere, the sleepless nights, the strange heaviness that won't leave your chest. You chalk it up to bad habits, bad timing, bad luck. But bodies don't deal in coincidence. They're instruments tuned to pick up signals long before your brain has the courage to process them. And when something big is approaching, your body starts rearranging itself in ways you can't explain. It's not an accident. It's an announcement. Think about it. When fear crawls in, does your heart not race before your mouth admits you're scared? When excitement builds, does your pulse not speed up before you even recognize what you're feeling? The body always knows before the mind catches up. That's the cruel little secret most people ignore. They wait for logic to explain what their skin, their breath, their bones already know. They want to analyze, categorize, rationalize. Because admitting the body might be right terrifies them. Because if the body is right, then change isn't optional, it's inevitable. And oh, how you fight it. You medicate the pain, distract the mind, numb yourself with noise. But the signals don't stop. They grow louder. That's what those sudden jolts of energy are. That restless twitch in your muscles, that pounding in your chest that shows up when nothing is wrong. It's the system screaming, preparing, gearing up for something your conscious mind is too slow to acknowledge. Your body is rewriting itself in real time, adapting for what's ahead. And the only reason it feels so uncomfortable is because you're still clinging to the old blueprint. But here's the beauty. You can't stop it. You can resist, delay, complain, but the shift is already happening. Your body doesn't ask permission. It obeys a command far deeper than your comfort zone. And the more you try to ignore it, the more it drags you along. Sometimes with subtle nudges, sometimes with violent shocks. A fever here, a chill there, aches that force you to slow down. Bursts of strength that feel unnatural. All of it is part of the redesign. You think it's breakdown, but it's breakthrough disguised in flesh and bone. Funny thing is, most people only recognize it in hindsight. They'll look back and say, "Oh, that's why I couldn't sleep. That's why I felt like I was crawling out of my own skin." But you don't get hindsight now. You get the raw, unfiltered chaos of the moment. You get the buzzing energy that makes you feel like you're too big for the body you're in. And that's because you are. You're outgrowing it. The body is making room for a version of you that doesn't fit in the old patterns. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels unstable. Growth is violent. Transformation is invasive. It doesn't knock. It tears down the walls from the inside. So while you're panicking, calling it stress or weakness, understand this. Your body is giving you the first warnings, the first signs. It's not betraying you, it's preparing you. You've been set up for something larger than the shell you've been living in, and the evidence is in the tremors, the aches, the sudden surges of strength you don't know how to handle. Those aren't accidents, they're signals. And signals aren't meant to be ignored. They're meant to be followed. Because the body doesn't whisper without reason. It only speaks when change is already on its way. Pain is the most misunderstood messenger in existence. Everyone runs from it, curses it, medicates it, hides it under layers of excuses and distractions. But pain was never the enemy. Pain is the signal flare in the dark. The burning torch shoved in your hands to remind you that something is shifting. You think it's punishment, but it's preparation. You think it's breaking you down, but really it's chiseling away at the weaker parts of you. Stripping off the excess weight you've been dragging around, cutting into the shell you thought was safe. Pain is the sculptor, and you are the stone. It hurts because pieces of you are being carved away, but what emerges is sharper, clearer, stronger than the block you started with. And yet, most people refuse to see it this way. They treat pain as proof they've done something wrong. They panic, thinking life has turned against them, that fate is cruel, that the body is betraying them. But betrayal doesn't feel like this. Betrayal is sudden, sharp, and final. Pain lingers, repeats, insists. Betrayal wants you broken. Pain wants you ready. And there's a difference. Every time your body aches, every time you stumble under the weight, something is being built beneath the surface. The strain is the rehearsal. The grinding is the training. You can't lift heavier without first trembling under the weight you're not used to. That trembling, that ache, is the proof that your system is stretching to carry more than it did before. But of course, people hate the process. They want the transformation without the tearing. They want the results without the burn. They want to wake up strong without ever feeling weak. And that's why they never change. Because real change doesn't come gift, wrapped in comfort. It comes disguised as discomfort, cloaked in struggle. Hidden inside the very thing you've been avoiding. That cramp in your chest. That restlessness that keeps you awake. That fire that makes your bones feel too hot for your skin. That's the hammer at work, pounding the dullness out of you. That's the furnace blazing, melting down the old so the new can be forged. And isn't it funny? The very thing you pray to escape is the very thing sculpting you into what you were meant to be. You want the blessing without the bruises, but the bruises are the blessing. Because without them, you'd stay soft, fragile, untested. Without them, you'd stay stuck in the illusion that comfort is safety, when in reality, comfort is the trap. Pain rips the mask off. It forces you to look at the parts of yourself that have gone lazy, the habits that are rotting you from the inside, the weaknesses you've excused for too long. It drags them out and puts them under a spotlight until you either break or rise. And rising isn't optional if you let the pain do its work. That's the secret people never tell you. If you lean into it, if you stop fighting and start listening, pain becomes a guide. It points to the exact area of your life that's transforming. The muscle that screams is the one growing. The scar that burns is the one healing. The wound that stings is the one being closed. You don't run from that. You lean in because it means the process is working. But instead, people drown it. They numb themselves with pills, with screens, with distractions, thinking if they can't feel it, it'll go away. But numbing doesn't erase the process, it only delays it. And when the pain comes back, and it always does, it comes sharper, louder, angrier. Because you tried to mute a message that was never meant to be silenced. Pain is relentless like that. It will circle back again and again until you either surrender to the process or shatter under the weight of resistance. So when you feel it, the pressure in your bones, the stretching in your lungs, the ache in your muscles, stop calling it weakness. Stop calling it punishment. Start calling it preparation. Because that's exactly what it is. Pain doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to prepare you for what's next. And if something big is coming, if a shift is waiting just beyond the horizon, then pain isn't here to scare you off. It's here to toughen your skin, sharpen your reflexes, and remind you that you were never built to stay the same. Change doesn't arrive politely at your doorstep, dressed in silk and carrying flowers. No, it kicks down the door, uninvited, dragging chaos into your living room and rearranging everything you thought was stable. People pretend they like change when it's safe, when it's cosmetic, when it makes them look good without demanding too much. A new haircut, a different outfit, a shiny gadget. That's the kind of change they clap for. But the real kind, the kind that rattles your bones, scrapes your soul raw, forces you to confront the ugly truths you've buried under layers of lies. That kind of change terrifies them. And yet, that's the only change that matters. The kind that flips your world upside down and demands you learn how to walk on the ceiling. Because comfort keeps you in chains. You think you're free, but you're not. You're just trapped in a prison that feels cozy. The walls are painted with routine, the bars are shaped like habits, and the lock is disguised as safety. You've convinced yourself it's where you belong, but it's not. That prison was never built to keep you safe. It was built to keep you small. And change, real change, is the jailbreak. Pain is the crowbar. Chaos is the accomplice. Together, they rip you out of that cage and drag you into a world you've never dared to imagine. But oh, how people resist. They cling to the bars, screaming for the door to stay shut. They fight for the very chains that are choking them. They cry about the storm, begging for the skies to clear, not realizing that the storm is what waters the seeds they never planted. Change is not polite, but it is purposeful. It doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your evolution. And if that means tearing your illusions apart piece by piece, it will. If that means taking away the things you swore you couldn't live without, it will. If that means shoving you to your knees so you can finally rise differently, it will. And the body, the body is the battlefield where this war plays out. Every ache, every twitch, every shiver in your bones is the sign that something is shifting. The energy that once felt steady begins to surge like electricity, restless, untamed. You feel exhausted but awake, heavy but alive, broken but strangely whole. That's the paradox of transformation. It destroys you and rebuilds you in the same breath. And just when you think you can't take any more, you realize the old version of you has already been buried, and something unrecognizable is crawling out of the dirt. But people call it suffering. They call it unfair. They label it as misfortune, never stopping to realize it's the only way forward. Growth doesn't ask for permission. It demands sacrifice, and it takes it whether you're ready or not. You lose pieces of yourself, old patterns, stale relationships, familiar environments, because they cannot survive where you're going. They were built for who you were, not who you are becoming. And you either let them go willingly, or change will rip them from your hands, leaving you bleeding, screaming, clawing at ghosts that no longer exist. And that's the cruel joke of it all. You don't get to negotiate. You don't get to schedule change for when it's convenient. It doesn't care if you're tired, if you're broke, if you're unprepared. It arrives like fire, consuming everything in its path. And you either run from the flames, or you let them burn away what's weak. And those who survive, they walk out of the ashes unrecognizable, unbreakable, untouchable. The scars become proof that they've been remade. The pain becomes the story carved into their skin. But the truth is, most won't make it that far. They'll fight against the current until they drown. They'll beg for the old life, never realizing it's already dead. They'll patch broken walls instead of building new foundations. They'll cling to the illusion of stability until it crushes them, because it's easier to suffer in the prison you know than to risk freedom in the chaos you don't. And yet, for the few who dare, for the ones who lean into the storm, who let the pain do its work, who stop resisting and start surrendering, change becomes the greatest ally they never asked for. It strips them of weakness, reveals the strength they didn't know was there, and molds them into something the old version of them could never even dream of. Because the body isn't just changing, the soul is mutating. The spirit is recalibrating, and when it's finished, you don't walk through life the same way. You tear through it. Funny thing about strength. People think it looks like muscles, big voices, or someone standing tall in front of a crowd pretending they've got it all figured out. That's not strength. That's costume work. Real strength is what nobody claps for, the kind that bleeds in silence when the lights are off. It's when your whole body aches, your mind screams, your spirit whispers to give up, and yet, for reasons you can't even explain, you take one more step. Not 10, not 20, not a grand leap for the world to admire, just one. A pathetic, almost invisible step. That's strength. That's power. That's the kind of thing heaven notices, even when the world doesn't. See, life has this cruel habit of testing you when you're at your weakest. It waits until you're hanging by a thread, then adds more weight, laughing as it watches you squirm. That's the game, and most people break there. They cry, they beg, they curse their fate, and eventually they lie down and call it the end. But not you. Oh, no, you're still breathing, aren't you? That means the fight isn't over. That means something inside you refuses to surrender, even when surrender feels easier. And that stubborn little spark, that defiance, is what separates survivors from statistics. But let me tell you the truth. Strength doesn't always feel strong. Sometimes it feels like you're dragging your own corpse uphill. Sometimes it feels like your chest is caving in, your mind is poisoned with doubts, and the only thing keeping you upright is sheer spite. People expect strength to feel glorious, like some heroic soundtrack should play while you battle through your struggles. It doesn't. It feels dirty. It feels lonely. It feels unfair. But it's real. And real strength is never pretty. It's forged in the dark, hammered by suffering, sharpened by failure, and polished with scars. You've been through enough to know this by now. Haven't you noticed? Every time you thought it was over, every time you swore you couldn't take another hit, you did. Life knocked you down, spat in your face, and buried you 6 feet under in despair. And yet, somehow, you crawled out. You dragged yourself through the dirt, blind and broken, and stood again. That's not weakness. That's proof. Proof you're more dangerous than the pain that tried to destroy you. And maybe you don't see it yet, but others do. They look at you and wonder how you're still standing. They can't comprehend the battles you've fought in silence, the wars nobody gave you credit for, the nights you screamed into the void, but woke up anyway. They can't see the invisible weight on your shoulders, but they notice how you carry it like it's nothing. And here's the secret. They envy it. They envy the strength they could never build because they never had the courage to walk through the fire like you did. Strength isn't about avoiding the fall. It's about how many times you hit the ground and still refuse to stay there. That's why the scars matter. That's why the wounds, the failures, the humiliations, they all count. They're receipts, evidence that you've been tested, broken, and rebuilt stronger than before. The ones who look perfect, they haven't lived. They haven't been gutted by life yet. They haven't been through hell, so they don't know what it means to rise from the ashes. You do. And don't be fooled into thinking strength is about never feeling weak. No. It's about what you do when you're weak. When your body screams for rest. When your mind whispers that you're worthless. When your heart feels empty. What then? Do you collapse? Or do you crawl? Because crawling forward, bleeding, crying, gasping, that's strength. That's what builds legends. Not the big victories, not the trophies, not the applause. The moments no one sees. The battles fought in silence. The nights survived alone. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you've been set up like this. Maybe that's why life keeps pressing down on you, suffocating you, testing your limits. Because it knows something you don't. It knows what's waiting on the other side of all this pain. It knows the kind of force you'll become when the weight doesn't crush you, but molds you instead. And it knows you're stubborn enough, reckless enough, resilient enough to make it through. So every tear you've shed, every bruise on your soul, every scream you've swallowed, it hasn't been wasted. It's the price of becoming unshakable. It's the down payment on the future that fear wanted to steal from you. And while others collapse under pressure, you've been quietly building endurance, carving out a strength that won't just carry you through, but carry others too. Because people like you don't just survive, you redefine survival. Funny thing about pain, most people treat it like a curse, like some cruel punishment they don't deserve. They run from it, medicate it, bury it under distractions, anything to pretend it isn't there. But pain is a teacher that doesn't ask for your permission. It barges in, sits you down, and shoves the lesson into your bones whether you're ready or not. And here's the trick key. What hurts you also shapes you. Every scar, every ache, every wound that burned you alive left something behind. Something stronger, something sharper, something real. You think you survived by accident. No. You survived because pain sculpted you into someone who could. It stripped away your illusions, shattered your pretty little expectations, and left you raw, exposed, and uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, you learned. You learned that people leave, no matter what they promise. You learned that love can break you just as easily as it can heal you. You learned that failure isn't the end, but a bloody beginning in disguise, and all of that came from pain. Without it, you'd still be soft, naive, fragile. With it, you've become something much harder to kill. Think about the moments that really changed you. Were they when everything was going well, when life was sweet and easy? No. Comfort never transforms anybody. It keeps them small. The fire came when you were bleeding, when you were lost, when you had no choice but to crawl through the ashes of what you thought you were. Pain forces reinvention. It rips away who you used to be so it can make room for who you're supposed to become. And that process, it's brutal, but necessary. The funny part is, while you're in it, you curse it. You ask, why me? As though life hands out suffering by mistake. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a mistake. Maybe the pain was designed to break off the parts of you that couldn't carry what's coming. Maybe it was sent to strip you down, to expose the steel underneath the flesh, to prepare you for a life bigger than the one you were settling for. Pain doesn't waste itself. It always has a purpose, even if you can't see it when you're in the middle of it. And notice how pain makes you pay attention. When you touch fire, you don't forget. When someone betrays you, you remember. Pain etches lessons into your skin, so deep you couldn't erase them if you tried. That's why you're sharper now, wiser, harder to fool. It cost you tears, sleepless nights, and heartbreak to earn that kind of clarity. But now Now you walk into rooms with an awareness you didn't have before. You can spot lies quicker, sense danger earlier, and protect yourself better. All because pain trained you. What's wild is that pain also exposes who you really are. It strips away the fake smiles, the masks you wear for the world. In suffering, you meet the real version of yourself. The one who either collapses or crawls forward. The one who either quits or claws out of the grave. And you're still here. Which means pain didn't just crush you. It revealed you. It revealed your capacity to endure, your ability to rebuild, your willingness to keep breathing, even when breathing hurt. That's who you are when everything else is burned away. But pain isn't just about you. It changes how you see others too. Because once you've bled, you recognize the wounds in someone else. You can see the smile that hides despair. Hear the tremor in their laugh. Notice the heaviness in their silence. Pain gives you empathy that comfort never could. It teaches you to look deeper, to understand that everyone is carrying something invisible, and that makes you dangerous in the best way. Because you can connect with people at their most human level. Most people will spend their lives running from pain, never realizing they're running from their own growth. But you've walked through it. You've felt its bite, its sting, its suffocating grip. And because of that, you carry something rare, wisdom earned through fire, resilience carved through suffering. You know things others can't even imagine, and that knowledge will follow you, guide you, protect you. Pain, for all its cruelty, has been your secret weapon. It turned you into someone no storm can easily break. Funny thing about money, people treat it like it's the prize, the finish line, the grand finale. They chase it, worship it, bleed for it, thinking it'll finally fix the cracks in their life. But what if the wealth wasn't about the money at all? What if the zeros in your bank account were just the disguise, the mask, covering something much bigger? You see, when life starts pouring resources into your hands, it's not because you're lucky. It's because you're being prepared. Prepared to carry weight most can't, to hold responsibility most would crumble under. Money. That shiny little illusion everyone's chasing, as if it holds the secret to happiness, the cure for emptiness, the bandage for every scar. They think if they can just stack enough of it, pile it high, the noise in their head will finally quiet down. But here's the thing. Money's not the destination. It's not the trophy at the end of the race. It's just a tool, a hammer, a blade. And like any tool, it's not about the thing itself. It's about who's holding it and what they decide to do with it. A hammer can build a house or smash a skull. The tool is neutral. The hand is what gives it meaning. But people miss that. They bow down to it, treat it like a god, let it dictate every choice, every relationship, every dream. They'll sacrifice their soul just to see numbers change on a screen. That's the joke. They think money will finally give them freedom, but most of the time, it becomes the chain around their neck. Because if you don't understand that money is just a means, not an end, it will eat you alive. It'll make you its slave. You'll spend your life protecting it, growing it, fearing to lose it. And the more you cling, the emptier you feel, because the tool was never supposed to own you. It was supposed to serve you. Now, when life starts setting you up to become wealthy, it's not about handing you a throne to sit on while you gloat. No, no, no. It's about giving you a weapon for the battles ahead. It's about resources, leverage, reach. Imagine being handed a sword and thinking it was a mirror. That's what most people do with money. They admire it, polish it, stare at their reflection in it. Meanwhile, the real purpose of the blade goes unused. And then they wonder why they still feel weak, insecure, hollow. Because they never learned how to wield it. Money amplifies whatever is already inside of you. If you're bitter, it will magnify your bitterness. If you're generous, it will magnify your generosity. If you're lost, it will make you even more lost. That's why the tool is dangerous in the wrong hands. That's why not everyone is handed the opportunity. Some people would let it rot them from the inside out, and life knows that. But when you've been broken enough, humbled enough, stripped of everything you thought mattered, you start to see money for what it really is. Not a savior, not a master, just a weapon, just a tool. And maybe that's why it's circling you. Because you've proven you don't worship it anymore. You've stared at empty pockets, empty tables, empty nights, and realized you're still breathing. You survived without it, so you're not owned by it. That's the kind of person who can be trusted with abundance. The kind who knows it doesn't define them. You don't kneel to it, you use it. You see beyond the glitter and understand the responsibility that comes with it. Because when the tool lands in your hands, you don't waste time building statues for yourself. You build bridges, doors, escape routes. That's the irony. The ones who used to pray just for survival, the ones who scraped and clawed and bled, they're often the ones who end up with more than they ever imagined, because they understand the cost. They understand the weight. They've felt the hunger, the lack, the silence of being overlooked. So when they finally hold the tool, they know how to wield it without letting it poison them. They know it's never about the shine, it's about the work it allows them to do. So no, wealth isn't the goal. It never was. It's not about buying your way out of pain or purchasing validation for the ghosts in your past. It's about being armed, equipped, sharpened for what comes next. It's about holding the tool steady in a world that keeps trying to break it out of your hands. Because the truth is, money won't change you. It'll expose you. It'll show everyone what was hidden in your heart all along. And that's why the focus can't be on the money itself. It has to be on the mission, the reason, the why. Otherwise, you'll end up like everyone else, bowing down to a tool while your soul starves. Every scar you carry, every sleepless night you've endured, every time you were knocked flat and still clawed your way back up. It wasn't random. It wasn't just bad luck or some cruel joke the world decided to play on you. It was training. Painful, merciless training. Life doesn't hand out responsibility to the ones who've only known comfort. No, it tests, it breaks, it strips. It makes you taste loss, rejection, betrayal. So, when the weight finally lands on your shoulders, you're strong enough to hold it without collapsing. People look at wealth like it's just about numbers, but the truth is, it's about weight. And the only way you learn to carry weight is by first being crushed under it. Think about the times you thought you were done. The nights when the silence was too loud, when the betrayal cut too deep, when the bills piled so high you couldn't see over them. You thought those moments were designed to destroy you, but really, they were chiseling you. Every crack in your pride, every bruise on your ego, every tear that burned your face, those were shaping you into someone who can handle abundance without drowning in it. Because here's the ugly truth most people can't. Most people beg for wealth, but if it ever landed in their lap, it would consume them. They'd lose themselves to greed, to arrogance, to fear of losing it all. They'd hold the tool with trembling hands until it cut them to pieces. But not you. You've been through too much. You've seen too much. You've been trained in fire. That's why you see money differently now. You don't see it as a toy. You see it as a responsibility. You know what it's like to starve, so you'll never waste the bread. You know what it's like to be forgotten, so you'll never ignore the ones who need help. You know what it's like to be lied to, so you'll use truth like a weapon. That's what the struggles were for. To burn the illusions out of you, to rip the naivety off your skin, to carve out the parts of you that would have been corrupted by success. It's almost funny, isn't it? The very things you begged to escape, the very seasons you cursed, were the exact things that made you ready. The pain you thought was punishment was preparation. The rejection you thought proved you weren't good enough was actually proving you were too good to settle. Every closed door, every delay, every heartbreak, it was all part of the conditioning. And while everyone else was chasing shortcuts, you were being built in silence, in shadows, in places no one applauded. And that's why when the responsibility arrives, you'll be able to handle it. You won't crumble under the pressure because you've already carried worse. Responsibility always demands evidence, and your life is the evidence. The scars prove your strength. The losses prove your resilience. The nights you almost quit prove your endurance. Every test you passed, even when you didn't know it was a test, is the reason you're being handed more. Because life doesn't trust the untested. It doesn't hand over weight to people who've only known ease. It looks for the ones who've been through storms and didn't drown. The ones who've been cut and didn't bleed out. The ones who've been abandoned and still kept walking. That's who gets chosen. That's who gets trusted with more. And let's be honest, responsibility is heavier than wealth. Anyone can count money. Anyone can spend it, flaunt it, waste it. But responsibility, that takes guts. That takes discipline. That takes the kind of backbone you don't grow in a soft life. You only get it by being pressed, crushed, ground down until all that's left is something unbreakable, That's why you've been through what you've been through. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't cruelty. It was proof. Proof that you could carry the load when it came. Proof that you could hold the tool steady when it was finally placed in your hands. So every failure, training. Every betrayal, training. Every moment you thought you were buried alive, training. Life has been stacking weight on your back for years, just to prove you could stand under it. And the funny part, you thought you were cursed. You thought you were forgotten. But the whole time, you were being forged, prepared, positioned. Because responsibility doesn't fall on the comfortable. It falls on the ones who've been prepared to carry it, no matter how much it costs. Loss. That ugly little companion that shows up uninvited, takes everything you thought you couldn't live without, and leaves you gasping in the rubble. People curse it, spit at it, scream at the sky, asking why it had to happen to them. But here's the cruel little twist. Loss is often the doorway to fortune. Not just the kind you can touch. Not just the kind you can count, but the kind that shifts your entire identity. You see, nothing teaches you the value of gain, quite like being stripped bare. Nothing makes you ready to handle abundance like tasting the sharp sting of lack. Without it, wealth would be poison. With it, wealth becomes a tool you're strong enough to wield. Think back to the times you thought the world ended. When the job slipped through your fingers. When the relationship shattered. When the people you trusted most stabbed you in the back. Those weren't just random tragedies. They were demolitions. Controlled demolitions. Everything that could have distracted you, destroyed you, or diluted you had to be ripped away, so that when fortune finally arrived, you'd actually recognize it. Otherwise, you would have wasted it, taken it for granted, treated it like play money in the hands of a child. Loss teaches appreciation. Loss sharpens vision. Loss carves out space for the new by clearing away the rot of the old. The irony is, everyone begs for gain, but nobody volunteers for loss. They want the prize without the stripping. They want the feast without the hunger. But it doesn't work that way. Without hunger, food means nothing. Without darkness, light doesn't blind. Without emptiness, abundance has no weight. That's why loss comes first. It builds the contrast. It breaks your illusions that comfort is permanent, that people will always stay, that your plans will always work. It smashes the fragile glass house you thought was solid, and when you're standing there barefoot among the shards, you finally learn what's real, and maybe that's the real gift. Loss forces you to see what you never wanted to face. It shows you who's really in your corner. It shows you what you've been leaning on that was never strong enough to hold you. It shows you that your own strength runs deeper than you ever imagined. You thought you couldn't survive without that job, that person, that safety net. But here you are, still breathing, still moving, still alive. That realization alone is worth more than gold, because it means nothing external truly controls you. That's the kind of realization that makes you unstoppable when the gain finally comes. But here's the twist most miss. Fortune doesn't replace what was lost. It doesn't heal the wounds. It doesn't bring people back. It doesn't erase the scars. No, it builds on top of them. The scars stay, the pain lingers, but they become the foundation. And that foundation is unshakable because it's been tested by fire. That's why your fortune isn't fragile. It's anchored in everything you thought was going to destroy you. It's rooted in nights of crying, in days of scraping by, in the silence of being unseen. No storm can wash away what's built on that. Loss also gives you empathy. Without it, wealth would make you arrogant, untouchable, blind. But when you've known what it feels like to have nothing, to be nothing in the eyes of others, you'll never forget it. And when the tables turn, you won't look down on the ones who are still struggling. You'll remember. You'll remember what it was like to wonder if you'd ever make it. You'll remember the nights of doubt, the mornings of despair, and that memory will keep you human when the wealth threatens to make you a monster. So when fortune finally arrives, you don't flaunt it. You don't cling to it like a scared child. You carry it with reverence, with respect, with a seriousness most people never understand. Because you know the cost. You know what it took to get here. You know the blood, the loss, the emptiness that built the ground you're standing on. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you worthy of it. Not the fact that you asked for it, but the fact that you survived everything that should have broken you long before it came. That's the paradox. Loss feels like death, but it's really rebirth. It feels like the end, but it's always the beginning. The ashes you thought you were buried under turn out to be the soil you were planted in. And when you rise, when fortune finally finds you, you'll know why it had to happen in that order. Gain without loss is hollow, but gain after loss, that's unshakable, untouchable, unstoppable. Character. That's the word nobody likes to talk about when it comes to money. They'll chatter on about strategies, investments, get-rich schemes, but they never stop to think about the thing money always drags out of the shadows, who you really are. Because money doesn't change people. It doesn't turn angels into devils or fools into kings. It simply rips the mask off and shows the world what was hiding under the smile. It's like a magnifying glass. Small cracks become canyons. Tiny sparks become wildfires. If you're greedy, money will make you insatiable. If you're fearful, money will make you paranoid. If you're insecure, money will turn you into a puppet dancing for applause. That's why it's dangerous to hand it to someone who hasn't been tested. They think the money will finally give them confidence, peace, or freedom. But it won't. It will simply multiply whatever's already inside. You see, wealth doesn't create, it exposes. And exposure is brutal. It tears away excuses, strips away disguises, and reveals the truth. That's why some people rise when they get it, and others collapse under the very same weight. Not because of the money itself, but because of what the mirror reflected back at them. And that's the cruel little joke, isn't it? People spend their lives praying for riches, not realizing that what they're actually begging for is exposure. They're asking the world to take a magnifying glass to their soul. They think it'll be all parties and champagne, when in reality it's sleepless nights and a spotlight they can't hide from. Suddenly every crack in their integrity, every weakness in their discipline, every demon they thought they'd buried, it all comes crawling out. The money just gives it a stage. But when you've been stripped already, when life has already dragged you through humiliation, loss, rejection, you've got nothing left to hide. That's when wealth becomes something different. It's no longer about flaunting, it's about using. Because you've been humbled, you've been broken, you've been exposed long before the spotlight. So when the money arrives, it can't corrupt you the same way. It can't inflate you into some hollow caricature. It just becomes fuel for the mission you already carry. The rich man who was never tested is a disaster waiting to happen. He builds towers, but they collapse because the foundation is rotten. He gathers friends, but they're only there for the shine. He gains power, but it eats him alive because his character was never strong enough to wield it. That's why you've been through the darkness, the stripping, the nights where you thought you wouldn't survive. Not because you were forgotten, but because you were being prepared. Your character had to be forged in shadows, so that when the light of wealth hits you, it doesn't blind you. And maybe that's the strangest part. Money doesn't give you power. It reveals whether you ever had power in the first place. It tests whether your heart is iron or glass, whether your motives are steady or selfish. Most people fail that test. But you've already taken it over and over again in ways nobody saw. When you chose integrity even when it cost you. When you kept moving forward even when you had nothing. When you refused to become bitter, even when betrayal felt like the only option. Those were the tests. And every time you passed, your character was being strengthened. So when the money comes, it won't own you. It won't twist you. It won't expose rot, because the rot has already been burned out. What it will do is amplify your strength, your discipline, your vision. It will give your values a megaphone. It will shine a light on the resilience that was carved into you through years of struggle. That's why the money is coming. Not because you need it to become someone, but because you've already become someone who can handle it. The wealth just makes it visible to the world. Control. That's the word everyone whispers about, but pretends they don't crave. People chase money because they think it buys them freedom. But what they're really after is control. Control over their time, over their choices, over the way the world bends around them. They want to stop bowing to alarms, bosses, bills, debts, and all the little chains that keep them crawling. They want to stand up and finally dictate their own terms. But here's the twist. Control isn't given, it's tested. And before you get to command anything outside of you, you have to prove you can command yourself. Money in the hands of someone who can't control their own impulses is like handing fire to a child. They'll burn everything down. Relationships, opportunities, their own sanity, because they never learned discipline. They want the world to obey them, but they can't even say no to their own cravings. They want financial empires, but can't control the urge to binge, waste, procrastinate. They scream for freedom, but they're enslaved by their own appetites. That's why most people will never touch real wealth. Not because they're not smart enough or lucky enough, but because they lack mastery over themselves. Life is cruel that way. It gives you a little, just enough to see what you'll do, just enough to tempt you. And most people fail right there. They blow it, misuse it, and then cry about being cursed. But it wasn't a curse, it was a test. You wanted control. And the universe handed you a fragment to see if you'd abuse it. And if you did, it was ripped away before it destroyed you completely. People call it bad luck, but it was mercy. Because real wealth in the hands of someone who can't control themselves isn't a blessing. It's a weapon aimed at their own head. But when you've been forced to discipline yourself, when you've had to stretch every dollar, control every choice, silence every temptation, you start building something rare, self-command, the kind of power most will never touch. And that power makes you dangerous because now you're not ruled by impulses, you're ruled by intention. Money doesn't own you, you own it. Success doesn't carry you, you steer it. And when you've proven that kind of mastery in the shadows, then and only then do you get to hold wealth without it consuming you. The funny thing about control is that people think it's about dominance over others, when really it's about dominance over chaos. Wealth magnifies chaos. Suddenly you're surrounded by options, temptations, distractions. It's a circus, and most fall right into the trap, chasing everything, grabbing at anything, spreading themselves so thin they lose everything. But when you've already learned how to anchor yourself, how to stay steady when the noise gets loud, that chaos becomes fuel. Where others are scattered, you're focused. Where others drown, you build ships. Where others lose themselves, you sharpen yourself. That's why the journey has been so suffocating, so restrictive. You've been forced to master patience when all you wanted was speed. You've been pushed to say no when all you wanted was to indulge. You've been tested with silence when all you wanted was applause. That wasn't punishment, it was training. Because if you can't handle control in the dark, you'll never handle it in the spotlight. Wealth doesn't change that. It just amplifies the stakes. So when the money arrives, you won't be like the rest. You won't chase every shiny object. You won't burn yourself out. You won't crumble under the weight of excess. You'll be steady, precise, deliberate. Every move will have purpose. Every choice will have calculation. That's control. And that's why the wealth is being placed in your hands. Not because you begged for it, but because you were forged into someone who can wield it without being destroyed by it.